Your home will never look good if it's full of quiet little signs that you're still living in the past. And the most heartbreaking part is that most of you have no idea the message your space is sending. You invite friends over for coffee, host family dinners on weekends, and every time those eyes scan the room, you catch that tiny pause, that polite smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes because something feels off, dated, unintentionally stuck in a version of your life you've already outgrown. Let me show you what's really happening here, because once you see these 8 interior design mistakes for what they are, you'll finally understand why some homes feel timeless and quietly expensive, while others just feel flat, temporary, like a snapshot from a trend that's already faded. The beautiful truth is that fixing them doesn't require tearing down walls or spending a fortune. These are subtle, precise shifts that work in any home, any budget, and they'll leave your guests wondering how you manage to make everything feel so effortlessly current and soulful. Think about it this way. Your brain is wired to read a room the same way it reads a face, scanning for harmony, depth, and authenticity in a single sweeping glance. When those 8 dated elements creep in, they trigger what I call the temporal flatline. That neurological moment where the eye detects visual cues tied to a specific era, and the entire space collapses into past tense in your mind. It's not dramatic, it's insidious. You walk in after a long day, and instead of feeling that deep exhale of, "I'm home," you feel a low-level friction, rooms that look assembled rather than evolved. Here's what's really happening inside your head. The visual cortex is constantly hunting for patterns that signal permanence versus novelty. Flat, literal graphics, heavy ornate metals, loud repeating zigzags. They all scream temporary installation to the brain. And once that flag goes up, the whole room loses its emotional weight. The cheat code here is learning to replace those era-stamped signals with choices that feel architectural, layered, and quietly intentional. The kind of moves that let the space breathe and grow with you, instead of locking it into yesterday. Let's start with the first offender that quietly dates more homes than almost anything else: wall decals. You know the ones, those peel and stick murals of birds, trees, geometric shapes, or motivational quotes that seemed like such a harmless, affordable way to add personality when the kids were little or when you wanted a quick accent wall. But here's the psychological trap most people fall into. Those decals sit on top of the surface like temporary tattoos on skin. Your eye immediately registers them as applied rather than inherent. And that single perception flips the entire room from designed to decorated for a season. Neurologically, the brain processes depth through subtle shadow gradients and texture variation. Decals create hard, graphic edges with zero optical transition, so the wall reads as a flat backdrop instead of a real architectural plane. It's the dollhouse effect in action, that eerie feeling that the space is a stage set rather than a place where real life unfolds. I can't conclude this section without mentioning how those bold, literal shapes also compete with everything else in the room. Real plants suddenly look cheap next to artificial-looking leaves on the wall. Furniture feels staged against a graphic billboard. The eye follows a W pattern across the room, searching for rest. And those sharp outlines keep yanking it back to the decal like a flashing sign that says, "This was trendy once." Now let me show you the science behind why wallpaper is the elegant escape hatch. Wallpaper doesn't sit on the wall, it becomes the wall. The ink soaks into the material, creating microscopic texture and soft color bleed that mimics natural variation, exactly like the way light filters through leaves in a forest. Your brain registers this as atmosphere rather than decoration. And that shift alone adds measurable depth, making the ceiling feel higher, the room feel wider. The pro move here is choosing patterns that work with the eye's natural movement instead of against it. Take a soft illustrated woodland scene, not the cartoonish decal version, but one printed with gentle watercolor gradients. From 3 feet away it reads as movement and story. Up close, you notice the paper's subtle embossing catching the light. Mount the paper so the pattern flows vertically, pulling the gaze upward and creating what I call vertical rhythm, that calming neurological cue our ancestors associated with tall trees and open sky. And here's a specific micro hack that changes everything. Extend the paper right to the ceiling crown. Never stop short with a border. That single decision eliminates the Terminator line, the harsh horizontal break that makes rooms feel chopped off and cheap. Let me paint the transformation for you. Imagine your child's nursery right now. Walls covered in those floating bird decals that once felt whimsical, but now make the space feel like it belongs to a toddler who moved out years ago. Strip them away, breathe, and apply a soft, abstract botanical wallpaper in muted sage and cream. Suddenly the room expands. The crib doesn't compete. The light from the window dances across the texture. And even when your child grows into a teenager who wants it turned into a study, the wallpaper still works, because it was never literal, never tied to one life stage. The brain relaxes. You feel smarter, more in control, like you've just been handed secret knowledge that most homeowners will chase their whole lives without finding. And if you want to visualize it even more clearly, picture the same living room you've been staring at for years, the one with the plain beige wall that somehow feels lifeless. Layer on a textural damask in warm taupe, and watch how the negative space around your sofa suddenly breathes. The eye travels in gentle loops instead of sharp stops. That's the power of replacing a decal's single-plane trap with wallpaper's layered intelligence. The second mistake that's aging your home faster than you realize is wrought-iron accents, those heavy, scrolling railings, dining chairs, and light fixtures that once screamed elegant traditional, but now just feel visually noisy and stuck in the early 2000s. Here's what's happening optically. Wrought iron creates dense clusters of high contrast lines that fragment the eye's path. Your brain is wired to seek visual equilibrium, a balance between order and organic flow. But those ornate scrolls overload the system with decorative information. It's like trying to read a beautiful sentence while someone underlines every third word. The message gets lost. Evolutionarily, heavy metalwork signals permanence in a fortress sense, but in modern homes, it creates the opposite. A visual weight that makes spaces feel smaller and more enclosed than they are. You feel it when you walk past the staircase, that subtle drag on your shoulders because the railing is shouting for attention instead of quietly supporting the architecture. The fix isn't removing metal entirely. It's choosing lighter, architectural forms that recede rather than dominate. Picture slim black steel balusters paired with a warm oak handrail. The lines so refined, they almost disappear into shadow until you need them. Mount the railing so the top rail sits exactly 36 inches from the tread, the industry standard that feels intuitive to the body, and suddenly the staircase feels open and current. In the dining room, replace the full wrought iron set with a simple steel-legged table topped in thick walnut. The contrast is still there, but now it serves the wood instead of competing with it. The cheat code here is mixing materials deliberately. Let the metal be the supporting actor, never the star. Brush the finish mat so it absorbs light rather than reflecting it, and watch how the room gains breathing room. I've seen this single change turn a dated breakfast nook into something that feels collected over decades, not purchased in one afternoon at a big box store. Now, let's talk about the third culprit that flooded homes during one very loud trend cycle, the Chevron pattern. It wasn't the zigzag itself that dated everything. It was the relentless repetition at the same scale across entire walls, floors, and upholstery. Neurologically, your eye craves variety in scale and direction. When every line repeats at the same angle and width, the brain goes into pattern fatigue mode, that low-level irritation that makes a room feel exhausting rather than energizing. It's the same reason a shirt with vertical stripes can make someone look taller, while the exact same print in horizontal bands does the opposite. Scale and direction dictate perceived energy. Chevron became the loudest voice in the room, pulling focus away from the people living there and anchoring the space to a very specific Pinterest moment. The elegant alternative is choosing patterns that support rather than shout. Straight vertical striping, for instance, creates a gentle upward pull that makes ceilings feel higher and the whole room more spacious. Use it on one accent wall only, painted in two close tones, so the effect is textural rather than graphic. In upholstery, mix a subtle stripe with solid sections on the same sofa. The eye registers movement without overload. For stairs, a simple runner in a tone-on-tone herringbone calms everything down while still giving you that rhythmic detail. The pro move is to break the pattern every few steps with a solid border. It prevents the eye from locking into the zigzag loop and lets the architecture breathe. Suddenly, the staircase feels intentional, not trendy, and your guests walk up it feeling lighter, more at ease, without ever knowing why. Bathrooms are the fourth place where dated choices stack up like a time capsule, because they combine finishes, lighting, and fixtures in one small, reflective box. Those Hollywood bulb strips, boxy builder-grade vanities, glossy white subway tile everywhere, and the occasional glass block shower panel all scream early 2010 builder special. The lighting is the biggest offender. Harsh overhead strips create flat, unflattering shadows that make skin look tired and surfaces look cheap. Your brain interprets uniform brightness as sterile, the same way it reads a cloudy day as emotionally flat compared to the golden hour warmth of directional light. Add in the visual clutter of mismatched mirrors and chrome hardware that reflects everything, and the room feels like a dressing room set rather than a sanctuary. The fix is to simplify to material-driven calm. Swap the vanity for one in warm walnut with flat panel doors and an integrated sink. The lines disappear and the wood brings natural variation that softens the whole space. Replace those exposed bulbs with two soft wall sconces mounted 66 inches from the floor, exactly at eye level for most adults, casting a 45-degree side light that sculpts cheekbones and makes the room feel expensive. Larger format stone tiles on the floor and shower walls reduce grout lines and visual noise. Pair them with a frameless glass enclosure and brushed brass hardware that warms the palate without shining like a showroom. The neurological payoff is immediate. The brain registers the space as intentional and restful, the kind of bathroom that makes you want to linger instead of rushing through. The fifth mistake is rose gold overload, that warm metallic finish that appeared on everything from candle holders to faucet handles during one very shiny trend season. When it repeats across multiple objects, your eye stops seeing the individual pieces and registers only the finish, turning the room into a catalog page instead of a lived-in home. Shiny metallics reflect light in a way that flattens depth. They create competing highlights that fight with natural window light and make the space feel soft in the wrong way, lacking the grounding contrast our brains crave for emotional stability. It's the sanitization trap again, where everything starts to look coordinated rather than collected. The sophisticated move is to let metal play a supporting role in mixed, low-key finishes. Choose brushed nickel or blackened steel for hardware, warm brass for a single lamp, and let wood, ceramic, and stone carry the visual weight. One small brass tray on the coffee table is charming. 6 rose gold accents across the same surface feels like a theme. The eye reads variety as intention, and suddenly the room feels layered, personal, and ready to evolve with you over the next decade. Slogan-heavy wall art is the sixth offender. Those gather, live, laugh, love, and blessed signs that once felt like shortcuts to personality, but now read as mass-produced messaging boards. Typography flattens a wall instantly. The brain reads the words, processes the meaning, and then has nowhere else to go. It's like a conversation that ends after the first sentence. The faux weathered wood and scripted fonts tie the piece to a very specific farmhouse moment, pulling the entire room backward, even if everything else is updated. Replace them with art that invites interpretation rather than declaration. A large, abstract canvas in muted earth tones gives the eye movement and color without spelling anything out. Black and white photography, especially personal travel shots framed simply, adds emotional depth that feels specific to you. Textile wall hangings introduce soft texture and quiet warmth that ages beautifully. The room stops feeling like a billboard and starts feeling like a sanctuary where stories unfold naturally. Matching furniture sets are the seventh mistake that turns rooms into showroom snapshots. When the sofa, love seat, and chairs all share the same fabric, wood tone, and silhouette, there's zero visual hierarchy, no contrast in scale or texture. The brain craves collected imperfection. Perfect sets signal purchased at once, which reads as temporary in the long timeline of a home. Bedrooms suffer even more. The full matching suite makes the space feel catalog stiff rather than restful. The fix is to mix pieces deliberately while repeating a disciplined palette. Anchor the living room with a deep navy sofa, then add a rounded boucle chair in cream and a square leather lounge in warm brown. The materials vary, the shapes vary, but the tones connect everything, so the eye still feels coherence. In the bedroom, let the headboard wall act as the unifying element, then layer different nightstands, art sizes, and lighting. The space now tells the story of time and taste instead of one shopping trip, and that story feels alive, personal, and quietly luxurious. Finally, the eighth dated choice is the chalkboard wall, that DIY favorite from the Pinterest farmhouse era that turned entire surfaces into permanent message boards. Handwritten quotes and doodles create constant visual noise. Smudges and ghost marks make the wall look worn rather than styled. It's the ultimate single-plane trap, turning architecture into a craft project that never quite settles. Upgrade to a modern command wall instead. A slim glass board feels crisp and light. Pair it with a narrow wood rail below for pinning essentials. Keep the scale contained to one section of wall, so it functions without dominating. Or paint a black accent wall and mount floating shelves and hooks. The surface supports organization instead of doodling. The room feels polished, intentional, and ready for real life. Now that you've seen exactly what's been holding your home back, here's the most empowering part. You already have everything you need to shift it. These 8 fixes aren't about chasing trends. They're about removing the signals that tell your brain the story is over. When you walk into a room that's been freed from decals, wrought iron, chevrons, dated fixtures, rose gold repetition, slogan art, matching sets, and chalkboard walls, you feel it in your body first. That deep exhale, that sense of spaciousness and soul. The eye travels smoothly, light sculpts texture instead of fighting flat graphics. Shadows create mass and mystery instead of harsh outlines. Your home finally matches the life you're living right now. And the people you love feel it the moment they cross the threshold. They may not be able to name why your space feels so good, but they'll linger longer, laugh louder, and leave thinking about how they can bring that same quiet magic home with them. And once you've cleared away everything that dates a space, the next level is learning how to build the kind of layered, intentional beauty that feels expensive without ever trying to look expensive. That's where the real magic happens, where every object earns its place, and the room starts to feel like an extension of the most interesting parts of you. I'll show you exactly how to do that next time, because the transformation you've just begun is only the beginning.